A Premier League game was interrupted for an anti-racism protocol for the first time on Sunday as Sunderland player Cheryl Geertruida reported discriminatory abuse from the crowd at their derby game away at Newcastle. The clash was paused early in the second half after Sven Botman was down injured, having been caught with a high boot. However, the pause in play continued for a lengthy period and referee Anthony Taylor called Newcastle captain Kieran Trippier over to the dugout to discuss matters with both managers and TV production staff. It was initially unclear what was being spoken about, before the Premier League confirmed that a shocking incident had occurred. In a statement, they said, "Today's match between Newcastle United and Sunderland was temporarily paused during the second half after a report of discriminatory abuse from the crowd, directed at Sunderland's Cheryl Geertruida. This is in line with the Premier League's on-field anti-discrimination protocol. The incident at St James's Park will now be fully investigated. We offer our full support to the player and both clubs. Racism has no place in our game, or anywhere in society. We will continue to work with stakeholders and authorities to ensure our stadiums are an inclusive and welcoming environment for all." After heading back onto the pitch, Taylor spoke with Sunderland captain Granit Xhaka before he restarted the game. Xhaka had originally alerted Taylor to what had gone on during the initial stoppage after running over to him, having been informed by Geertruida. Sunderland manager Regis Le Bris, whose side won 2-1, said, "I spoke to Cheryl after the game and he seemed okay, but we need to support him." A Newcastle spokesperson added, "We are aware of a report of racism made by a visiting player against someone in the crowd. Our stance is clear: we do not tolerate discrimination of any form. We will work with the authorities to fully investigate and will ensure any individuals are identified and held accountable." The victory extended Sunderland's unbeaten Premier League run against their arch-rivals to 11 games in what was the first meeting between the two sides at St James's Park since 2016. However, the game was also marred by chaotic scenes ahead of kick-off when both sets of fans clashed outside of the stadium. One video showed Sunderland fans holding their heads after being struck by bottles thrown as they made their way to the ground amid the clashes. One fan was taken to hospital after being administered with CPR, but police say this was a medical emergency and not linked to the trouble. There was one arrest. Sunderland's team coach was also damaged after being pelted with bottles as it tried to leave the area, and each bottle that hit the vehicle was greeted by cheers. The chaos arose after a section of Sunderland supporters made the decision to walk to the stadium without a police escort. The majority of Sunderland fans travelled from Newcastle train station to the stadium with Northumbria police, who largely did a good job of keeping both sets of supporters apart. Newcastle fans had congregated outside the Sandman Hotel, which is just outside the ground, and were producing a raucous atmosphere with flares alight alongside plenty of chanting. The first group of Sunderland supporters managed to get through without trouble, although cans, bottles and drinks were thrown at them as they passed. However, a second group of fans had no such luck after they unveiled a Sunderland flag on their way through, with punches thrown and missiles hurled. The flag was torn off them by home supporters, and police in riot gear quickly moved to separate the rival groups, who even clashed with the authorities. One visiting supporter was left with a bloody wound on his head. Videos from the incident demonstrated the chaotic scenes as sirens sounded in the background while police rushed around.